Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you send us, sometimes dense, often fascinating, and, well, we try to pull out the essential knowledge for you, the learner.
And today we're looking at something really extraordinary. It's this almost unbelievable chain reaction through modern history.
Yeah, we're tracing a line that somehow connects a pretty scandalous love affair back in 1912 England involving a super famous writer.
H.G. Wells, right?
H.G. Wells himself, yes. And it connects him directly to the survival, decades later, of a completely broken prisoner of war in a Japanese coal mine.
It really does sound like something fate cooked up, doesn't it? But what the sources are suggesting is it's about human choices, very personal choices, rooted in love, but also fear.
And how these choices just ripple outwards.
Yeah.
Across time, across continents, mixing up literary prophecy with nuclear physics, and finally, survival itself.
Exactly. Our sources today, they weave together autobiography, history, a bit of philosophy too.
And our mission really is to follow that single, almost fragile thread. How did H.G. Wells's his emotional turmoil, what the source calls his terror of love, how did that get tangled up, almost mathematically, with the exact moment the atomic bomb dropped? And crucially, how that decided if one specific man, the author's father, lived or died in August 45.
And anchoring this whole thing, this whole journey, is a kind of riddle. It's an unanswerable question that really defines the human experience in these sources.
Right. You mentioned this earlier, Anton Chekhov's Question 7. We should probably bring that in right away.
Yeah, absolutely, because it sets the whole frame emotionally, intellectually. Chekhov, he designed this question to show that literature, its real job isn't giving answers, especially not neat ones.
Okay.
It's about asking the tough questions, the necessary ones. And this question, it mashes together cold, hard logistics with, well, the most complex human emotion.
So what is the question exactly?
It goes like this. Wednesday, June 17th, 1881, a train had to leave Station A at 3 a.m. in order to reach Station B at 11 p.m. Just as the train was about to depart, however, an order came that the train had to reach Station B by 7 p.m. Who loves longer, a man or a woman?
Right. It's the sheer absurdity of it. The train schedule has absolutely nothing to do with who loves longer.
Precisely. It mirrors that impossibility of, say, calculating Hiroshima's horror versus the horror of a POW camp. There's no neat equation.
So we're looking at how a life gets shaped by this collision. Random chance, massive trauma, and this central, unanswerable question about why we do what we do.
Yeah. We'll be pulling together these four threads that seem totally separate at first. That intense love affair, how nuclear science got started, the brutal reality of the Pacific War POW camps.
And also a reckoning with Tasmanian history. That seems like another layer altogether.
A necessary one, according to the sources. It's convict past, the shame. It all feeds in. So let's start where the author starts, at the site of survival and this really chilling sense of historical erasure.
Okay, so thread 1, the author's starting point. It's emotional, it's geographical. He takes this trip, a difficult one it sounds like, winter 2012, to Ohama Camp in Japan.
This is the actual place his father was held. Forced labor, a slave laborer in a coal mine running deep under the inland sea.
The description in the source is stark, bitter cold day, iron sky is the phrase used.
Yeah, and when he gets there, the camp itself, gone, completely wiped off the map. Barracks, gates, everything, just nothing. That's his first hit of this historical oblivion idea.
He then goes to a local museum, right?
Yeah.
Hoping maybe there's some record, some memory there.
Exactly. And it just makes the feeling of erasure worse in a way. There's this woman there, super helpful apparently, knows everything about the coal mine operation, its history, how it grew the Japanese workers' lives.
A real expert on the mine itself.
Totally, a fount of knowledge.
Yeah.
But then the author asks about the foreign POWs, the slave laborers. Silence, zero mention. It's like that part of the mine's history just didn't happen.
Wow. How did she react?
Well, the source says she wasn't hostile or anything. She just gave this tolerant smile. And the author reads it as pity, maybe, or this polite way of denying it. Like, oh, that story, that never happened.
Suggesting the beatings, the starvation, men dying naked in the snow.
Yeah,
just
a fabrication.
Or at least not part of the official remembered history. It's been professionally, scrubbed clean.
That encounter, that lack of memory, it sets up this next part perfectly, the incredible personal link between history and his father's fate. We need to get into the timing of the bomb.
It's absolutely crucial. The timing is just precise, frozen. 8:15 a.m., Monday, August 6, 1945. Major Thomas Fireby in the Enola Gay 31,000 feet up, pulls the lever.
43 seconds later, Hiroshima detonates. 60,000 people estimated killed instantly.
And here's the link, the chain reaction made personal. At that exact moment, 80 miles south, the author's father.
Who's in his 4th year there? Skeletal, sick?
Near naked, pushing rock carriages in a dark mine tunnel, completely unaware that this apocalypse happening miles away, this mass destruction, meant he was going to live.
Exactly. Because the alternative was certain death. The Japanese military had this plan, the Kitsugusakusen, mass suicide of 100 million Japanese if the Allies invaded.
Operation Downfall, the planned invasion.
Right. And critically, part of that plan was an explicit order. Massacre all 32,000 Allied POW slave laborers in Japan the moment the invasion started.
So the bomb stopped the invasion.
And saved every single one of those POWs. The weapon of mass death was, for them, simultaneously a guarantee of personal survival.
That paradox is just staggering. And the source contrasts this huge event with the physical place now, the former mine entrance, where prisoners ran this gauntlet of beatings. What's there now?
Yeah, it's jarring. Where the entrance was, this site of awful, prolonged suffering, now stands a love hotel.
A love hotel, seriously.
With neon signs, the whole thing. Catering to what the author calls quick opportunistic sex, an oblivion of pleasure replacing the oblivion of suffering.
It's like the ultimate symbol of forgetting, maybe, or just moving on in the most jarring way possible.
Trading one kind of oblivion for another. The oblivion of trauma for this, like contemporary oblivion of fleeting desire. Its history paved over with something completely different.
And this theme, this historical gap, it happens again, doesn't it? Later, he's in a hostess bar.
Yeah, in Sayonara City, he's talking to a hostess described as having dreamy anime eyes, speaks good English. He tells her why he's there visiting where his father was a slave laborer.
And her reaction?
She just blinks, smiles, and asks, quite innocently it seems, what is slave labor?
Oh, wow. Just no concept.
None. And the author feels this profound sadness, realizing language just fails. How do you explain the starvation, the beatings, the constant nearness of death to someone who hasn't even heard the term? The memory is just gone within a generation.
But it wasn't just about Japanese forgetting, was it? He talks about his own feelings, his own shame when meeting elderly Japanese villagers.
Right. He was worried about being this, unwelcome ghost, digging up painful memories for them. These were people who were kids during the war.
And this is where it gets morally complex again. Their memories weren't simple either.
No. They remembered being taught the Allied soldiers were devils, but what they actually saw were pitiful, near-naked skeletons. So you have the official propaganda versus the human reality they witnessed.
And it wasn't just cruelty from the guards. His father mentioned kindness, too.
Yes, that's the duality. Extreme cruelty from the guards, absolutely. But his father also spoke about profound kindness from some of the Japanese miners, the civilians working alongside them, sharing tiny bits of rice at huge personal risk.
Which leads to this really difficult encounter with Mr. Sato, a former guard, or maybe just a witness.
Yeah, the source is a bit ambiguous, but Sato seems like a decent old man now. And meeting him forces the author to confront his own potential.
To ask himself.
If Mr. Sato, who seemed a decent man, was capable of being a guard, doing evil, or just standing by when evil was done, would I be any different?
Would I join in the beatings because it was expected?
Exactly. Standing there, he felt they could have been brothers or lovers, recognizing this terrifying, universal human capacity for cruelty within a broken system.
Yeah.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Evil isn't always monsters. Sometimes it's just ordinary people conforming.
And bringing it back to Chekhov's question 7, this whole section just poses the problem, doesn't it? Was his father saved by love, the miner's kindness, his bond with his men, or by the brutal math of destruction? There's no easy answer.
None at all.
Okay, let's shift gears dramatically. From the ashes of Japan to the genesis of the bomb itself. And it starts, unbelievably, not in a physics lab, but with H.G. Wells and a love affair around 1912.
It's such an unlikely starting point. Wells, the famous writer, the futurist, he'd already imagined tanks, air warfare.
Right.
And he's reading chemistry, Frederick Saudi's work on radium, atomic decay. And these ideas, this concept of immense power locked inside atoms, the source says it physically excited Wells in a manner akin to sex.
Which is quite a statement. Wells saw himself as this rational modern man, right? Advocate for free love, science guiding society.
Absolutely. He apparently often justified his affairs by saying he was being true to his modern philosophy, not just, cheating.
Yeah.
It's important context for what happens next.
Which is Rebecca West.
Ah, yes. Cicely Fairfield, writing as Rebecca West, Young, brilliant, fiercely critical, and she just demolishes Wells in print.
What did she say?
Called his novel Marriage an old maid's mania coated in cold white sauce. Just brutal for a guy who prided himself on being cutting edge intellectually and sexually.
Ouch. She basically used him as a launch pad.
The source puts it bluntly. She leapfrogged to an elevated position on the shoulders of the famous she sat on and shat on. She was 19, he was 46. But despite all that, or maybe because of it, there was this electric fascination.
Leading to an affair.
A really intense one. West wasn't just playing around. She wanted, demanded, complete love without measure. All-consuming, powerful. And according to the source, this intensity, this sheer force of her affection, it startled Wells. It actually terrified him.
The terror of love.
That's the phrase. And it drove him to run away, basically.
Yeah.
He escapes West's demanding presence, goes off to Elizabeth von Arnim's chalet in Switzerland, and it's there, in that retreat, fleeing from the psychological weight of this love.
He starts writing the novel.
The novel that changes everything. The World Set Free, published in 1914. He takes the science of Rutherford and Soddy, extrapolates, and literally invents the concept of atomic bombs.
Not just vaguely, but with chilling detail.
Eerily precise. He described weapons of hitherto unimaginable power destroying cities, leaving death areas filled with glowing radioactive vapor.
Wow. Give me some specifics.
He described the bomb's effect as a shuddering star of evil splendor, creating a boiling confusion of molten soil. Decades later, pilots who saw Hiroshima, one captain, George Marquardt, said it looked as if the sun had come out of the earth and exploded. Wells's fictional nightmare became the blueprint.
It really hits home, that line from the source. Fiction may be only fancy, yet reality is often no more than the enthusiastic answer we give to our dreams and nightmares.
Yeah. Wells's personal crisis, his flight from love, it somehow crystallized this nightmare of destruction, gave it form.
And this is where the baton passes from fiction to physics, right? Through Leo Szilard.
Exactly. Szilard, a physicist, Hungarian Jew, fled the Nazis. He wasn't just a casual reader of Wells. He was a deep admirer, a disciple of Wells's vision of a rational, scientific elite saving the world from itself.
Okay, so how does Wells's fictional bomb concept actually ignite in Szillard's scientific mind? This is the famous traffic light moment.
That's the one. 1933, London. Szilard was apparently a thinker who did his best work while walking or bathing, letting his mind wander. He'd just left his hotel, walking down Southampton Row.
And he gets stopped by a red light.
Yes. Stops at the curb, staring at the traffic lights, red, yellow, green, and apparently everything else just faded away. The traffic, the London smog, oblivion. And in that moment, he has this mystical revelation.
Of the nuclear chain reaction. Can you break that down simply? What was the key insight?
Okay, so scientists knew splitting an atom released energy, but that was like one atom, one burst. Szillard's revelation was about self-sustaining exponential growth.
Right.
The core idea. What if you split an atom with one neutron, and that split released 2 or more neutrons?
So those 2 neutrons would then split 2 more atoms.
Which released 4 neutrons, splitting 4 atoms, releasing 8. It goes geometric. One becomes billions almost instantly. From a single event to a massive explosion.
And he explicitly linked this insight back to Wells.
He did. He said he realized this potential because he had read The World Set Free. The fictional prophecy lit the scientific fuse. And Szilard, knowing this and seeing Hitler rise, knew he had to act. He actually patented the idea but kept it secret, terrified the Nazis might figure it out.
Which eventually leads to the Manhattan Project.
Directly. Szilard, deeply worried about a German bomb, was the one who convinced Einstein, who had the necessary clout to write that famous letter to President Roosevelt.
Urging the U.S. to develop the bomb before Germany did.
Exactly. So Szilard, in his terror, essentially forces the creation of the very weapon he dreads, believing the only thing worse than having it was the enemy having it first.
The moral complexity is just immense. He wanted to control it, maybe use the threat to force global cooperation.
But he ends up enabling its creation. And after they achieved the first controlled chain reaction in Chicago, 1942, under the football stands, his reaction wasn't triumph, it was dread.
What did he say?
He recalled shaking hands with Fermi, the lead physicist, and saying, "I thought this day would go down as a black day in the history of mankind."
Wow. Even at that moment of scientific breakthrough.
He saw the implications. So again, Chekhov's question hangs there. Who loves longer, or maybe more responsibly? Wells, fleeing intense love. Sealard, whose love for humanity, or maybe fear for it, led him to help create its potential destruction. It's overwhelming.
So the story circles back now, from the global scale of physics and war to the very personal, back to the author's father and the unique landscape of Tasmania that shaped him.
Right. His father comes back from the camps, changed. The source says he was vaporous, there and not there, suffering from what the family just called Dad's ulcer, a quiet man seeing the world as a great tragicomedy.
And this experience forged a very particular survival code in him. He strongly rejected the kind of individualistic survival often seen in movies, right? Like King Rat.
Absolutely rejected it. He was adamant that the kind of character in King Rat the Wheeler Dealer, stealing, hoarding, looking out only for number one, wouldn't have lasted 6 months in the real camps he knew.
Why not?
They would have been killed, or at least completely ostracized. His experience taught him survival wasn't about individual cunning, it was collective. It had to be. The Australian officers, for instance, they were forced to pool their money, work together in the hospital, the kitchen. Together, they survived. That was the key.
So mateship wasn't just a nice ideal for him.
Not at all. It was pragmatic. He called it an enlightened selfishness. Not pure altruism, but the understanding that the group's survival depended on protecting its weakest member.
And the measure of strength.
Was their capacity to help the weakest. It wasn't about being the toughest. It was about having the foresight and willingness to support those struggling most.
Is there a specific story that illustrates this?
Yeah, there's a powerful anecdote from the Speedo period on the Death Railway. This was when the Japanese pushed the construction pace insanely fast, hence Speedo. Men were dropping dead from exhaustion, disease, starvation.
Just brutal conditions.
Unimaginable. And the author's father, a sergeant, remembers Japanese trucks getting bogged down in the mud at night. The exhausted POWs were forced to push them out.
A potentially fatal effort for starving men.
Exactly. And his father said he, as the sergeant, always chose himself to get behind the truck and push, even though he could have ordered his men.
Why did he do that?
To save his men. That last bit of energy-sapping effort could literally kill someone on the brink. By sacrificing his own limited energy, he protected the collective strength. It was tactical kindness, really, long-term survival thinking rooted in apparent selflessness.
And this rejection of individual ambition, it carried over into their views on money, too, tied into their Tasmanian background.
Very much so. Working class, convict heritage, they deeply mistrusted cash, purely transactional relationships. Money wasn't neutral to them.
How did they see it?
As an outside force, something designed to subjugate everyone it met. The tool the wealthy used to control the poor, echoing that colonial slave society foundation of Tasmania.
There's that quote from the father about money.
Yeah, it's great. Money is like shit. Pile it up and it stinks. Spread it around and you can grow things. Very earthy, very practical. Accumulation is toxic. Circulation is productive.
And this attitude even shaped their hopes for their son, the author. They didn't want him to be successful in the usual sense.
Right. They hoped he'd be a good plumber, not an excellent or successful one. Which sounds odd, but it wasn't about limiting him.
What was it about then?
It was a cultural rejection of presumption, of hubris. Seeking excellence or success in that ambitious way felt dangerous. Like tempting fate, or worse, adopting the mindset of the oppressors from their history. It tied directly into the shame of being descended from convicts.
Let's talk about that shame, Tasmania's founding. It leaves a deep mark.
Oh, absolutely. The source talks about the grandmother, mate, always insisting they were free settlers, not convict stock, living in constant fear of being called crawlers, which is apparently the lowest term for convict.
She even lied about her age.
Her whole life, yeah. To hide having conceived out of wedlock, another layer of shame connected to that past. These family fictions were necessary shields.
And the author confronts this directly at one point.
He does. He saves up his wages as a young man and buys himself a bluey.
What's a bluey?
It's this specific heavy black wool jacket. It was literally the jacket issued to convicts, instantly recognizable as the uniform of servitude. So by buying and wearing it, he's deliberately dressing as the convict ancestor he was told they weren't, facing the family lie.
But the silence, the shame, it wasn't just about the convicts, was it? There's the deeper trauma.
The foundation of the colony itself. The slave society structure, and the near-complete genocide of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, that's the even bigger solace.
And Wells connects back into this too.
Yeah, amazingly. Wells apparently said the initial idea for the War of the Worlds came from his brother, who lived in Tasmania. His brother compared the hypothetical Martian invasion wiping out humans to the real, very frightful disaster for the native Tasmanians when Europeans arrived.
So the silence and lies cover multiple layers of trauma.
Exactly. As the author says about Tasmania's colonial past, what remained was either silence or lies.
All this weight, the war trauma, the historical shame, it seems to culminate in the author's own brush with death, the kayaking accident.
Right. Age 21, kayaking the Franklin River, a crucial formative experience. The river floods overnight. He makes a mistake, pins his kayak under a rock ledge right below a waterfall.
Trapped.
Completely trapped. Boat folded in half, legs jammed. Pinned by the immense force of the water, only survived because he found a tiny air pocket right in front of his face.
And he was stuck there for hours. Rescue attempts failed.
Yes, agonizingly futile attempts. And then he starts to feel himself leaving.
Leaving, what does that mean?
He describes it as a physical sensation, rising up out of the gorge, feeling peaceful, calm, no pain. He knew objectively he was dying, slipping away into this seductive lateness, this oblivion.
But he fought it. He chose to come back.
He did. He had to summon what he calls the crushing, punitive gravity of living, the sheer heaviness of reality, to pull himself back down. He consciously avoided thinking of his mother because that felt like surrender.
Instead,
He forced himself to picture his girlfriend's face, Jay, even though they were basically broken up. Called her name again and again, fighting his way back into the pain, the struggle to breathe, the trauma, choosing existence, however agonizing, over the ease of death.
that choice, that return, must lift a huge scar.
Absolutely. The source says the feeling of being trapped wasn't just a memory. It became a perpetual reality that haunted him, especially when he closed his eyes. And that trauma, that need to exercise the feeling of being trapped,
That's what pushed him into writing.
he realized later, yes. His first novel wasn't about the accident, but it was written to get rid of the psychological burden of the accident. It's like his own version of survival, parallel to his father's mateship, a desperate act to save himself.
So now we bring all these threads back together. The POW camp, Wells, Siller, the drowning. It all comes back to Chekhov's question 7, doesn't it? This refusal of easy answers.
Absolutely. Look at the war's scale. It just defies any simple moral math. The source points out we can't even agree on how many died in Hiroshima. 60,000, 80,000, 140,000. All the numbers are qualified, debated.
And nobody agrees definitively on why the war ended exactly when it did either.
Right, and the source insists you can't create some kind of equation of horrors. You can't morally weigh Hiroshima against the death railway deaths, maybe 100,000, maybe 250,000 forgotten souls, or against the hundreds of thousands of German civilians killed in Allied bombing raids.
Trying to balance that ledger is impossible. It
Right.
just leads to argument, not understanding.
That's the Chekhovian point, exactly.
Oh.
The role of literature was not to provide answers, but only to ask the necessary questions. The attempt to quantify is futile.
The world, the source suggests, is more like a wild river under thin ice, complex, messy, and the only fools are those with answers.
Yeah, and this complex view of morality connects to a really interesting take on time in the source material, influenced by indigenous Australian philosophy, particularly Yungu ideas.
Non-linear time. How does that apply here?
Well, in places like Tasmania, the author argues, history doesn't just move forward and finish. It recurs. It circles back. The past isn't past. It's still intensely present, like the ancient rock carvings, the petroglyphs depicting a cyclical reality.
So the convict suffering, the Aboriginal genocide, it's not over.
Psychologically, its effects are still happening, still shaping the present. It's not a closed chapter.
And his near-death experience reinforced this feeling.
Profoundly. The drowning blurred the lines between life and death. He had this realization. I had been alive, and now I was dead, dreaming I was alive. Or I was alive, dreaming I was dead, dreaming I was alive.
Wow, that's quite a thought.
It breaks down our usual sense of fixed tenses. Life isn't just past, present, future. It's this constant flow. Life is always happening and has happened and will happen. A continuous circle of being and potential.
Which brings us to the very end of the narrative, the author's final, really crucial conversation with his father, who's now frail, 97 years old. This is after the trip to Japan.
The author, having processed all this complexity, this pain, decides to give his father a kind of gift, a necessary illusion, the source calls
What
it.
does he tell him?
He chooses to emphasize the kindness he received in Japan. But the crucial part is he tells his father that the former guards he met, including the one his dad hated most, nicknamed the Lizard, had expressed sorrow and apologies and asked him to pass that message on.
Was that actually true? Did they apologize?
The author admits probably untrue, but adds, "It was as much as I could say with any honesty." He gave his father the essence of closure, a meaning distilled from the chaos. It was an act of love, a writer crafting a final healing narrative.
And the impact on his father?
Immediate and profound. His father listens, hangs up the phone. Later that same day, something breaks neurologically. He loses all memory of the POW camps.
Completely.
Completely. The mud, the beatings, the starvation, the Speedo period, all gone. He knew vaguely he'd been a POW, but the specific traumatic memories vanish.
But his other memories were intact, before and after the war.
Yes, those remain strong. It was as if receiving that message of apology, true or not, allowed him to finally let go. It was as though he were finally free.
And what remained, according to the source?
Through that slow filtering away of trauma, all that was left was an idea of love. Love for his wife, his family, the driving force, the suffering erased, the connection endured.
So we've traced this incredible loop. H.G. Wells's fear of love ignites Leo Szilard's terror of war, which leads to that spares a slave laborer's life.
Whose survival and experiences shape his son.
The author, who then grapples with history, shame, and his own near-death experience. Love and war, fiction and reality, all tangled together.
It's an amazing testament to how powerful stories can be, isn't it? How a narrative born from personal crisis can literally shape the physical world. The author himself flags the irony.
What does he say?
Poetry may make nothing happen, but a novel destroyed Hiroshima, and without Hiroshima there is no me, and these words erase themselves and me with them. It's a mind-bending paradox.
And his parents, their whole philosophy, rejecting ambition, choosing kindness, mateship.
They created, the source suggests, a necessary illusion. The illusion that individual lives, their choices, their love, could actually mean something against the backdrop of a chaotic, often meaningless universe.
For them to survive and for the author to exist, love had to win out over bitterness or greed.
Which leaves us, and you the listener, with a final thought to chew on. If a fictional nightmare born from one man's anxieties could become horrifyingly real.
If Wells's fear could manifest as the bomb.
Then what about the flip side? What unseen, unwritten hope may be rooted in the small acts of kindness or solidarity you perform today? What potential reality might that be building towards? What hope could become tangible tomorrow?
A provocative question indeed, on the hidden architecture of our choices and fates. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.